A lot of the Bible is actually closer to polytheism than monotheism. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. So for some of you, this is not going to be news. For some of you, this is going to blow your mind. Now, when we say monotheism, a lot of people think of it as what's called strict monotheism, which means there is only one God, and that is the only God that exists at all. And we'll get to that in the end, because if that's the case, we've got some other really interesting implications. But here's the easiest place to find it, is to look for the phrase Lord of Lords or God of Gods, because that implies that this God is higher, more powerful, more better than the other gods that exist. Find that in Deuteronomy is one of the places, but all you have to do is just get into a place where you can search the Bible, look for Lord of Lords or God of Gods, and you'll find it all over the place. But you even find it in a more famous scripture. And that scripture is, of course, the Ten Commandments, right? Do you remember how it starts? You will have no other gods before me. That is the recognition of other gods. And it's not that big of a deal when you go back and understand the ancient Near Eastern culture and what everybody understood. Let's get into that. So in that part of the world, everybody had their own god. Each nation had their own god. And when you went to war, either your god won or you didn't. And the idea was there were sort of patron deities. And so there were lots of gods recognized. And some people, some countries, people groups had multiple gods. Others just had one or two or three. And in the Semitic world, you had one, or actually maybe two. Wait, what are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about Asherah. So you find a couple of interesting paintings and even an inscription that says, here is Elohim and his bride, his consort, his whatever, Asherah. And there are lots of evidence. There's a lot of evidence that in lots of places in the Semitic world, there were people who were worshiping a male version of God and a female version of God, which is very interesting. And it's something that you see in the Bible, this pressure against Asherah poles, which is the patriarchy trying to fight against there being a female deity. And yes, eventually there are some people who begin to believe in strict monotheism, which is there is only one God that exists in the world. And that's fine. But if that's what you believe, then there's some really interesting implications, because if there's only one God that exists in the world, then what that means is whenever someone says the word God, refers to a deity, there's only one referent for that word, for that concept, because there's only one God that exists, which means that in any part of the world, in any religion, when they are trying to connect with God, what they're trying to connect with is that one single deity that exists. And that is problematic for our evangelical friends because, well, it means that it's possible that multiple religions could be trying to worship the same God. I'm not trying to get in a fight. I'm not trying to make that argument. I'm just saying that that is the logical implication of that. And if that's where you come from, if you were a strict monotheist, then you've got to square with that implication and figure out what you do with it. And when you're reading the Bible and you see Lord of Lords or God of Gods, you can realize that there is this progression throughout the text that starts with sort of almost polytheism and goes all the way through something closer to strict monotheism. And it's a progression of thought. And that's nice, because if there was no progression of thought, it would mean people were stagnant and weren't learning. But that's not the case. And so it means that it's permission to us to not be stagnant, to keep learning things like this.